Kirby Smart is ticked off. I just got back from the press conference with Kirby on Tuesday night. We got to talk to 7 players. We got to talk to Kirby first, and he is not happy. He was not happy with what he saw at practice. And hey, when I was walking up past the facility to get into the press conference room, I heard him, and he didn't sound happy. There's a difference between tough coaching and just being pissed off, and that's what I heard on the loudspeaker when I was walking into the facility. He said, we have a long way to go from being good. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post bringing you what Kirby Smart said to us on Tuesday night post-practice. In full disclosure, look, he's not in the best mood in these press conferences after Tuesday nights. He's in a better mood on the Mondays or when it's not right after practice and he's just tired and he's got other things he wants to go do. He wants to go watch the film back and get his guys ready. But look, he wasn't happy with the way that they were practicing. This is not me just trying to grab at you, not me trying to grab your attention, not just trying to grab a headline. I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been in that press conference room. I've been in hundreds of Kirby Smart press conferences at this point, and I can tell when he's genuinely not in a good mood, and he was not in a good mood tonight. I'm just going to read off my notes. I wrote down the quotes. This is some of the stuff he was saying. We can't really practice to our standard because they're all tired. All right? He was talking about how so much of Georgia's team is new this year. He feels like between transfers, between first years, he just thinks that there's such a large portion of the team, especially what's practicing because of all the injuries Georgia has, is new and in their first year at Georgia, whether they're freshmen or transfers. And it shows. It shows. Now, look, these things happen in the spring, and it's normal for high school players to need to get acclimated to playing at a Division I football level, playing at a Georgia where what's the standard? The standard is being elite. The standard is competing. The standard is excellence. That's all that Kirby's asking, right? That's all he's asking. It's not that complicated, right? But that's what he wants. And he talked about how, look, people were asking him, does it have to do with NIL? And he said, look, if this is what he said about NIL. He said, if this is about the NIL era, then nobody is going to be successful. Something that you heard C.J. Allen talk about last week is how the money doesn't matter. You're hearing these older players talk about that. Jordan Hall tonight, Oscar Delp, all these guys talking about how, and Monroe Freeling, one of the tackles for Georgia, talking about how, look, you just got to be able to take tough coaching. So what really happened at practice? He said that guys were putting their hands up, and getting offended by tough coaching. And Kirby said, "What? It's like you're coaching me hard." And look, he just thinks that the players aren't taking the coaching as well right now, and that they're gassed, they're out of shape. And look, I don't think he's going to be super happy at the maybe. Look, maybe he told us this on purpose. Maybe he wants everyone to know about it because he knows we're going to run and tell everyone about it. That's our job to do that. So maybe he's not happy with the way that we're going to cover this and the way that we're going to talk about it. But look, it is much harder in 2025 to block out outside noise than it was in 2015, than it was in 2005, than it was in 1995. Why? This, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, immediately after Kirby tells us all this, we're blasting it out on all these social media sites for you to hear. Well, he wouldn't tell us that if he didn't want people to know that. He's not going to say anything to us that he doesn't want people to know. So there's going to be a balance between blocking out the noise, and the reason I'm bringing that up is kind of twofold, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But at the end of the day, look, Georgia's got a lot to figure out this season, okay? Quarterback is going to be different. It's not Carson Beck. Offensive line, 4 of the 5 guys to the NFL. Running back, their main running back from last year to the NFL. Wide receivers, they brought in some freshmen that I think are going to probably crack some playing time. They brought in a couple transfers that are likely going to be starters. So new there. Defense, over 77%. I think about 78% of their sack production gone. Edge rushers, gone. Backup edge rusher, gone to the transfer portal. 2 starting safeties from the last couple of years, gone. Middle linebacker from the last 3 years, gone. There is so much turnover for this year's Georgia football team, and they've got a lot of figuring out to do. Kirby talked about it last week, how he wanted to see fire. That's how we rounded out the press conference. He said, all I want is being able to see the fire and the compete out of everybody. And then he said, and all these things that I'm saying that he said, I'm reading direct quotes from what he said tonight. He goes, competitive toughness is so hard to find nowadays because kids like to take the easy way out. So look, tonight felt a little bit like a complaint about the NIL era to an extent, but you don't like to hear that there's players putting their hands up when they're getting coached hard, that there's young kids who haven't been coached as tough. Something that Kirby talked about with us a year or two ago was that, hey, I think that football is declining. I think that the development of football players is declining. I think that the offensive line specifically is a position that people feel like is declining, that the physicality of football is declining, and in turn, like I said a second ago, the development is declining. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe part of it is football isn't getting coached as hard. I don't know. I'm looking for the answers here. If you're a coach at the high school level, tell me. If you're a coach that's been to a Georgia practice, that's a high school coach that's been allowed to go in there and see how they do it, you tell me, what's the difference? He said that guys are just not used to the reps, that the reps that they would have gotten in a 3-hour period in high school, they're getting it in an hour and 40 minutes, and they're gassed, and they aren't able to handle it. Now, like I said, this is spring. This isn't August. This isn't September. This is not week 3 against Tennessee up in Knoxville. This is spring. This is about getting better. Kirby took some of the blame. He said, look, we just need to coach them better. We need to get them better at conditioning. But I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you, I think he's mad. I've seen him mad a handful of times where he's just upset with how things are going. But a long way from being good. He said that every spring to an extent. He said something like that. But I've never heard him complain this much about work ethic and competitive fire and conditioning. I haven't heard him say anything about that. So I want to transition to talking a little bit about what the players told us about and how Oscar Delp, Arnold Fling, these guys saying that they were listening to outside noise too much last year, that he didn't think that they were doing the fundamentals as well on a day in and day out basis. And so, look, none of these things that I'm talking about right now are Georgia's standard. And he says that they can't practice to the standard because of how out of shape they are. And I know that Kirby hates that. Why? Because Georgia is notorious for how hard they practice. You hear players say it the last few years. They talk about how the practices are more difficult than the games. How some of these games felt easy because of how difficult they practice at the Butts-Mehre facility. And how much they get after it in a 2-hour period of time. You've got guys that have been just total warriors about it. Javon Bullard, Kamari Lasser, Nakobe Dean, just to name a few. Guys that tried to uphold a standard. That is more difficult for a Georgia team that has so much turnover, that doesn't have as many older guys that have played a ton of reps. I mean, just off the top of my head, guys that have been around for more than a year that are going to be looked at as leaders, that have played a ton. Oscar Delp, at this point, lost and lucky, and he's going into year 3. Dylan Bell on the offensive line, there's no one that's had a significant number of snaps. Michael Morris and Drew Boba played a good bit. On defense, C.J. Allen going into year 3. Dalen Everett going to year 4. In the past, there's been this guy, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Lewis Cine, like a laundry list. Last year, you get Malachi Starks, Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, Nas Stackhouse, Warren Britt. It's just not that. And it's part of a new reality of college football, but it's also part of a new reality for Georgia football. And in this NIL era, are there going to be more divas? Are there going to be more people that want it handed to them? That's basically what Kirby Smart said tonight. They're going to do their best job to coach it out of them. Monroe Freeling, Oscar Delp, KJ Bolden, Nate Frazier, all those guys tonight told us they're trying to talk to the young guys and get them ready. But so far, Kirby not extremely pleased with what he's seen out of his football team this spring. Is it just a motivation tactic or is it true? I'm trying to give you the latest news on that. Thank you for watching.